discuss going into the summer. Well, all right, let's take a recap of the Rockford IceHogs 2020-21 season. Hogs finishing with the record of 12-19-1-0. After a slow start, they would get their footing in the month of March. 5 wins over 7 games. That would continue on into the month of May as well. 5 wins over 8 contests, and a very young team. They had 18 rookies. I went back and looked at the opening night roster, 18 rookies of the 29 players listed. And overall, the IceHogs would have 20 rookies of 41 total players. So if that talks to the youth of this team, I think those numbers speak for themselves. Some highlights for the IceHogs during those runs. They had the back-to-back overtime victories at Grand Rapids. You had a hat-trick performance against Chicago with Brandon Peary, the shootout games as well against Grand Rapids and Chicago as well. So there's a lot of positives to take from on the ice. Off the ice, the Hogs had 12 players score their first professional goals this year. 16 score their first professional point. And in the National Hockey League, the IceHogs continuing to feed the top club in the Chicago Blackhawks. 8 players to the NHL this year, 7 to Chicago. And that includes NHL debuts from guys like Philip Kurashev, Kevin Lonkinen, Reese Johnson, Wyatt Kalnick, Mackenzie Entwistle, Alec Regula, all making their NHL debuts, and some of them grabbing their first NHL wins, goals, and so forth. Well, I want to go ahead and welcome on in Mark Bernard, the Chicago Blackhawks Vice President of Hockey Operations Team Affiliates. And Bernie, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a interesting season. It had its challenges in the beginning, but certainly once the season got going, players were on the ice. Everyone was excited to get things rolling again. But before we pick apart the year overall, I wanted to get your thoughts on what was the 22nd season of IceHogs hockey.
Well, first of all, thank you, Joey, for that introduction. And I want to thank everyone for taking the time out today to join us here on the Zoom call. And I hope that all of you are doing well. Everyone's healthy. Their families are safe and healthy as well. And I know it's been a long, strange year with this pandemic. And we went from a start date in the American Hockey League of early December being pushed back to early February. And I'm sure in between there was a lot of days that we wondered if we would even be able to function this year. But you know, we knew coming in that it would be a very young group here this year. Joey, I think you touched on, I counted 21 rookies over the course of the year that we had play games for us, which is unheard of at this level. But you know, the one thing I can sit back and after kind of taking the last 48 hours, 24 hours to really look at our season is, first of all, I'm really proud of all of our staff here. And I want to make sure I make mention of first and foremost our trainers. You know, those are the guys that get forgotten about sometimes. They're behind the scenes. They're not, you know, in the paper. They're not on the highlights. They're not in the media. But you know, DJ Jones, John Walter, Russ Holden, Tyler Carpenter, and Juan Gonzalez, our staff here did a phenomenal job this year. Keeping our team safe, keeping our staff safe. You know, I'm sure it got old for our team every day getting tested and going through these different protocols and being told to pull their masks up and everything throughout the year. But those are the guys that we were able to play 32 games and not miss a game due to COVID. It's because of them. They were exceptional. They were phenomenal at their job all year. They went above and beyond. And we had Ashley Minnick, who filled in on a part-time basis too for us. That was fantastic. And I think our players really understood at the end of the year when they saw how many teams had lost games to COVID and had to reschedule games due to COVID, on how lucky we were to have those people in our corner. So first and foremost, I got to thank them because they were exceptional. Secondly, you know, our coaching staff, Derek King, Anders Sorensen, Peter Aubrey, our video coach, Adam Gill, my assistant general manager, Nick Anderson, along with, you know, our development coaches in Brian Campbell, Kendall Coyne, Kevin Delaney, Eric Condra, Yannick Perot, and they're all led by Mark Eaton. Unbelievable job this year. You know, they knew coming in we were going to have a very young group. Players that maybe would have been here any other year were, because of the formation of the taxi squads, were kept up in Chicago, which, you know, took away some of our you know, guys that we would lean on for more scoring and some experience. But you know, the season started off, I think we were 0-5-1 to start the season, 2-7-1 through our first 10. And then, you know, but after that 0-5-1, we went 12-14, and There was some good nights, and there was some nights that you would expect from a young group. But the culture that they developed in our locker room for these young players was one of learning, and that mistakes are going to happen, and it's how we learn from those mistakes, that we're going to improve upon and get better. And there weren't too many nights where the coaches were ticked off or yelling or anything like that. That wasn't the culture that we had in this locker room. And the players knew they could make a mistake, and they weren't going to sit out the next night or get scratched or what have you. And I think that all of our players, we carried extra players this year because of COVID. Guys that maybe would have started the year down in with the Indy Fuel stayed here. Because of the protocols, we need to have our own taxi squad, what have you. But I think everyone improved, everyone got better, and that showed in the results after that tough start. I was looking at it this morning, and I didn't realize we lost 16 games this year by 1 goal. And if you count the empty netters, there was 20 games, 20 out of 32 games by really 1 goal. We showed we were going to compete. We were going to battle. That was never more evident than last weekend. We were playing the Chicago Wolves. We got down 4-0. I think we were being outshot 17-1 at one point. Really not a great first start. We kind of hung Tom Auburn out to dry. I felt bad for him, but all of a sudden, we're late in the game and it's 6-5 game. Our team never quit. The resiliency that this group showed night in, night out, even though they knew there was no playoffs coming up, it would have been easy for them to just pack it in and we lose that game 6-1 or 7-2. We come back and make it 6-5. And they're, the Chicago Wolves general manager even said if there was 5 more minutes left in that game, we were going to overtime. And that's what I took from this season. It wasn't so much about the wins and losses as what our players learned. And I thought our coaching staff did, and our development coaches did a wonderful job with that. And we're going to have a lot of these same kids back here next year. So the lessons that they've learned this year are going to come in really handy coming into next year.
And Bernie, what were some of the challenges that the organization was able to find success with in a year of COVID-19 when you want to learn, you want to develop and get some of these young guys, their feet underneath them in the pro game, but at the same time with social distancing and having everybody spread apart and team chemistry not being what it could be normal in a normal season with the camaraderie in that locker room with players alike and with the coaching staff. What I guess fueled that development that saw the IceHogs be able to turn a corner and, as you mentioned, do so well after that early start to kind of get warmed up and then saw success in the later stages of the year?
Well, I think the one thing that the pandemic has taught all of us is we all had to learn to think out of the box. And, the way that we used to always do things, we had to change, and this is a great example, like going, the Zoom calls. And, last year, I think it was early October, we developed a speaker series with the players that we thought may be in Rockford this year, the players that were in Rockford last year. We started doing a once a week speaker series where we would have the coaches show different video on what we're going to do for systems, or, we'd have someone come on and talk to the group. I know Patrick Sharp came on the 1 week and spoke to the kids and about the benefits of playing in the American Hockey League, even though you may feel that you're above it and you don't need to be in the American Hockey League, how it builds that foundation for the remainder of your career and what it did for him. And I think the 11-12 weeks that we did that speaker series, we ended about 2 weeks before the players reported. I think that helped pave the way because the players came in, they were already comfortable, even though they had maybe never met Derek King or Peter Aubry or Anders Sorensen face to face, they were already comfortable with them. They were comfortable with talking with Kevin Delaney or Brian Campbell or Kendall Coyne. There was already that comfort level. So when they came into Rockford to start training camp, they could really hit the ground running. And I've always said, when you have young players, you're going to get young mistakes. And those young mistakes, 9 times out of 10, end up in the back of your net. And it was no different, at the beginning of the year. But our players never felt a sense of panic, starting with our coaching staff. And they just continued to improve. And, our coaches thought out of the box. All of our meetings were held via Zoom calls. At 4:00 at night, they would do video sessions with the players during the season. because we weren't having everybody in one locker room. We utilized the visitors locker room here at the BMO. We had auxiliary stalls set up in the hallway out front of our room so that players could social distance. And, the only time we're really together is on a game night when the team would be in the locker room. But our coaches thought out of the box to help these kids develop. And the amount of video that our coaching staff does one-on-one with each player throughout a season is overwhelming. It really is like an academy here. We that's the culture that we're trying to form, because at the end of the day, yes, we want to win. We would love to go deep into a playoff run and hoist a Calder Cup here for our fans. But at the end of the day, we have to get those players to Chicago. We have to find a way to get them to Chicago. And I was so proud, not only of the players, but of our staff here. When I see Philip Kurashev, Brandon Hagel, Nicholas Bodin, Kevin Lonkinen, Colin Delia, when they make the team out of the gates in Chicago, and they weren't just on the team, they were huge contributors to that team and played a big role in that team. And they were, for the most part, a lot of those guys had 1 year in Rockford. It was the development that they did with our coaching staff here and our development coaches that was able to enable them to go up and have that kind of success in Chicago. And, this all started, it was the vision of Stan Bowman and Al McIsaac, 13 years ago, when after Dale Talon had left, to expand our development department because we needed to expedite the development of our young players. And then, you mentioned it off the beginning, to see players like, Reese Johnson and Alec Regula and Mackenzie Entwistle and Wyatt Kalnick, who all played quite a bit here at times during the season, to go up there and get their first taste of NHL action. And again, not only just be fillers in the lineup, but contribute. That goes back to the hard work of our staff here and our development coaches. And, they've just created such a great culture here that the players, enjoy them. They enjoy the coaching staff. They enjoy coming to the rink, and we had such a young group here this year, and we're going to have that same group back here. So I can't wait till next year to hopefully hit the ground running. I told the players after the game the other night how proud of them I was, and when you have young players, the one thing that it usually takes a good 25 to 30 games for them to really get the feel of the American Hockey League, because it's the second best, league in the world, no matter where you're coming from, college, junior. There's a process of learning what it takes day in, day out to be a professional athlete. And they kind of hit the ground by Christmas. You kind of see the upward swing in their game after 25 to 30 games. And I felt that we were really seeing that in our players here in Rockford over the last 5-6 games, but then our season was over. So, in a perfect world right now would be that Christmas time, middle of December, and the players are really starting to take those steps forward. Our players did do that. Unfortunately, it was just a 32-game season. So I'm excited about next year and having all these kids back, because they're all wonderful, wonderful people off the ice, and they're great athletes who are very devoted to what they're doing on the ice.
Turning it over to members of our media. If you have a question for Mark Bernard, use that raise your hand feature. We'll start with Patrick Williams. Patrick, your line is active, sir.
Yes, Mark, thanks for doing this. You used the word academy, and that's a word you're hearing a little bit more around the hockey world these days. What are some ways that you could expand that concept even further and build it out from what it is right now?
Well, Patrick, the one thing, I know we do here that's a little different, and when the veterans first come here, they kind of take a look at it and they've never seen it before. Is I'll give you a kind of a regular Tuesday here. If we don't have a game, our goalies will go out with Peter Aubry around 9:30. We try and carry 3 goalies here because of how much development work we do. So last year, for example, when we had Kevin Lonkinen, Matt Tompkins, and Colin Dealey here, one of the goalies would go out with Pete Aubry from 9:30 to 10 o'clock and do a really good skills session with our goalie coach. And then all 3 goalies would stay out from 10 to 10:45 with the development session, which is not only our coaching staff here, but all of our development coaches. And they would have 3 or 4 different areas set up on the ice where there's different things going on. And then they'd come off, they might do some video, get a drink, towel off, and then they head back out at 11 o'clock or shortly thereafter for their full practice. So it's really a full day from starting at 9:30 till probably a little after 12 noon that these guys are on the ice. And it's kind of gotten away from that old, practice 10 to 11 and that's it for the day. And, on top of that, we're also trying to incorporate their off ice training with our strength and conditioning coach. So one of the ways that we've done that for our young players as well is, Stan and I had a conversation along with Al McIsaac and Mark Eaton last summer before I guess it would be the 2019-2020 season. Is it going to make a difference in a player's development if they play, say, 70 games or 68 games instead of 76? And we all kind of came to the agreement, no, it's not going to. So we got in a habit of some of our players, you guys wouldn't see why they're a healthy scratch, but it was all planned that maybe a player doesn't play on a Wednesday night. But now that allows us to kind of go at it hard with him on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, both on ice and off ice as development days. And then that player would jump back in the lineup on Friday and someone else might come out and do the same thing for a couple of days on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And we just found that it really built up their skills on the ice, and we were able to continue to maintain their strength on the ice, off the ice, because so often in the first pro year, you'll see a player, we like to use the phrase hit the wall, kind of in that January, February portion, when we're getting up around 55, 60 games, they, with all the travel and all the practice. Well, now that we've continued to build up their strength off the ice, they're not losing that. They're able to maintain throughout the whole season. And then I think, our continued communication with them during the summer months on their training. Not only do we have our strength coaches in Chicago and our strength coach here in Rockford, but we also have Christian Burris, who's our developmental strength coach, who will speak with the players during the summer and go back and forth on videos and making sure that they're following the workouts that we need to. I think the days of having one person in your development department that, has to see every player that you draft or sign, no matter where they are in North America or Europe, those days I think are long gone for all organizations. It's really of all hands on deck, and the way the salary cap is and the way that it's going to be the next few years by staying flat, it's imperative that we're expediting the development of these kids so that they can get to Chicago and help us on the cap, because their entry level deals are a little bit lower. And you saw that this year with the kids that went up there and played. They not only took a roster spot, that they contributed on a nightly basis. So I think we can always look for out of the box ways to improve. And the thing, as I mentioned at the beginning with the veterans in Rockford, we make those development practices for the veterans. They're optional. They're mandatory for our entry level deals, but the players are all out there together. That's the thing I love. Cody Franzen this year was out there for every practice. Garrett, Mitchell was out there every time for those development and skills work. I can't say enough about those two gentlemen as our veterans. We're never going to be a team in Rockford probably that has our 6 veterans, because we're so young. You need the right ones that can really take your coach's message and echo it throughout the locker room and teach these young players how to be good pros day in, day out, not only at the rink, but away from the rink. And Garrett Mitchell and Cody Franzen did that for us this year. And when our young defensemen, I think we had 6 rookie D here this year, when they see, at 9:45, Cody Franzen, who's 33 years old, is out working on his one-timer with Brian Campbell, trying to get better, that really sets the tone for those young defensemen, because they're like, hey, I'm 18, 20 years old. He's 33 and still trying to get better. That's the route I need to go. So those 2 gentlemen did a fantastic job for us, and they played a big part in the development of all of our young players.
Thank you.
Brandon Canis, your hand is up. Your line is active, sir.
Hey, Mark, wanted to touch on 2 things. First thing, coaching staff. You guys going to bring back Derek and Anders and Peter?
Yes, they will remain. They will be with us going forward. Again, when we're looking at what the results are. We can't always just get into this looking at the number of points we have or the wins and losses. We have to look at the big picture and what they do overall with the players here. And Derek and Anders have done such a phenomenal job of picking up where Jeremy left off when he was called to the Blackhawks a few years back. Not a lot has changed in the day-to-day workings. And, Derek is a very laid back, easygoing guy that has done it all in his career, as a player, spent time in the American Hockey League, played in the NHL for a long time, was a high goal scorer, and then finished his career in the American Hockey League. And he knows how these players are feeling, when they get sent down. Maybe, they've been to camp a few times and they get sent down, they're not quite ready. And he knows the approach to take with them. And I think that that coaching staff, is a great fit for what we need to do here in Rockford. And, Anders, from a development standpoint, was doing it, albeit with younger athletes with the Chicago Mission, the U16s, and as a development coach with us prior to taking over as an assistant coach. He loves spending time individually with the players and helping them develop better skills. And he encourages them to ask questions and challenge him. And the players have been great with him. And, the work that Peter Aubrey's done here with our goaltenders for the last 5-6 seasons has been phenomenal. You look at guys that were in Chicago this year, and Colin Dealey and Kevin Lonkinen, who both spent considerable amounts of time here with Peter. His work speaks for itself. So those guys will be back, and, we're very happy about that. They're the right guys to lead the youth of this organization.
And then the second thing was, what was the first year like working with Nick Anderson and his assistant general manager role with you?
Know what? Nick Anderson he's going to be, I wouldn't be shocked if he's an assistant GM or GM in the National Hockey League one day. He's a very smart, dedicated individual. He came on here 3 years ago as, doing analytics for us, to assist us, to get more information back to Chicago on what we were doing here in Rockford. And right away showed that he was capable of doing more. And I think the next year we made him, Rockford Analytics and coordinator of hockey. And this year was, the assistant GM as well. And he takes a lot of things off my plate as I'm going back and forth. There's not too many games our media doesn't see it, where I'm in Chicago or I'm traveling with Chicago. And I'm also traveling and seeing all of Rockford's games. So, he's been able to take a lot of things off my plate that I was doing in the past. And they might seem mundane, but they're big pieces of the puzzle, like the travel and recalls from the ECHL with our affiliate, the Indy Fuel, and communication with them. And, helping with player travel as well, getting players home at the end of the year. Those were all things that were also on my plate that, they really take my stress level down when I don't have to deal with them as well. And he's someone I can count on, and he's done a phenomenal job for us here.
Thanks, Mark.
Jay Taft, your line is active, sir.
Hi, Mark. Just real quick on you talked about the goalie situation and just how well it's worked out through Rockford over the years. Give us a quick evaluation of what you saw from Matt Tompkins this year. Interesting year for him.
Well, I think, Matt played, Matt's had an interesting run to this level. And I'm you won't find a better individual and a more driven individual than Matt Tompkins. It seems like forever ago when we drafted him, I believe he was playing tier 2 hockey in Alberta when we drafted him. And then he went to 4 years of college. And, the one thing that was intriguing with Matt was coming out of his collegiate career was every summer he would come to our development camp in Chicago, and he'd be the best conditioned athlete, and he would have a phenomenal week with us. And then he would go back to school, and it seemed like it would never last a full season. It would fall off the rails a little bit. And when we talked about signing him to an American League deal that first year, I really felt it was more the environment he was in than the player himself. And I wanted to give him that opportunity to show us. And he went into Indy, and Indy wasn't a very strong team that year. And I thought he really developed and took strides to the fact that we signed him again. He returned to Indianapolis and led the league, I think, in games played and saves. And, wins and, had a phenomenal year. And then last year, we made the decision, even though we knew we were going to have Colin, we were going to have Kevin, we're going to go with 3 goaltenders here because, again, what we do on a development side each day are, if we didn't have 3 goalies here, it would really limit the amount of work that Peter Aubry could do with them because they're facing so many shots in an hour of development practice. And then you go on the ice for another hour of regular practice. They're exhausted. They don't have that energy level to take to another goalie, to just do something individual. So by having 3 here and then having 3 out for the development practice and 2 for regular practice, it allowed us to really focus on the development of the goaltenders. And I think he's made great strides. And I was disappointed at Peter and Aubry, and I just spoke about this morning, is I was disappointed we didn't have a full season where he could really run with the number 1 job here. I believe he played 14, 15 games. He spent, a few stretches, a couple times on the taxi squad, which, I think even though he wasn't playing games, it's we've got to look at like this is educational, spending time up there facing NHL shooters for a few weeks. And it allows Jeremy and his staff to also see his work level on a daily basis. And I think he's made great strides.
And I know it's just a mini season, but you did see then from the start of the season to the end here lately, progress that you want to see from a goalie that can make a leap.
Yes, I did see that. And so did Peter Aubry, our goalie coach. Matt's, we've never seen Matt go in a backwards motion. Matt's always one that's moving forwards, and you're never going to outwork Matt Tompkins. He wants to get better. He strives to get better. And, our goaltending situation here, we haven't had our year-end meetings with our management yet, but Matt is someone that we're going to have discussions about.
Thanks, Mark. I'll let the rest go.
Scott Lebra, your line is active. Your hand's up. Your line is active, sir.
Hi, Mark. How does the condensed offseason change things or make things more challenging for the players, the coaches, for everybody?
Well, it's definitely going to be a short runway to next year. We were talking about it the other night regarding rookie camps and how, if they're going to go next year. And even though we had opted out of Traverse City, we were looking last year before the pandemic, we were going to have something with Minnesota. And we're got to look to see if we're going to revive that coming forward for this year. And that starts in early September, right before the Blackhawks camp. So when you look at it, it's going to come quick, and not only do we have, players to sign and, we have a draft and free agency, but with taking over the ownership of the team here in Rockford, we have, an office staff to grow and, a lot to happen here as well. So it's going to be a quick off season, one that I'm excited about. And, I think it's just going to be exciting. We saw it briefly here in our last 3 games where we were allowed to bring some of our season ticket holders in. And our players were so excited to play in front of 300 fans. I can't wait for them to hopefully skate on to the BMO Ice next year in front of 6,000 fans for opening night and get back to having a lot of fun here and playing a full season. But it's going to happen quick. And I think our players, will have a short rest. And I told a lot of them, make sure they take time to let their bodies recover. We played a lot of games in a short time here. We pushed them hard off the ice. So now it's time to take 2-3 weeks, let your bodies recover, and then, they'll get back in the gym and start training towards camp.
We've seen a lot of changes in the organization from John McDonough on down. That's to be expected in all pro sports. You're kind of the one constant. What is it about this job that you enjoy that makes this organization and what you do just such a great fit for you that gives you so much satisfaction?
Well, I appreciate that question. And, I love working in the American Hockey League. I was a minor league guy, I'll never, that's the best my skill level would ever let me be. And I'm proud that I was able to play 13 years, between the ECHL and, I'd go up to the American Hockey League for a cup of coffee and over in Europe for 4 years. And, I think that helps me with my job here is that I understand what these players are going through. And, I never stopped wanting to play at a higher level. Even when I was 32 years old, playing my last season in Toledo, you always wanted to push for more. But, as a 5'7" goalie, I just didn't have more to give. But, I've had these conversations several times over the years with Stan Bowman, and, when he's looked to maybe move me into a different area or maybe shift my job title. And I love what I do. And, I'm at a point in my career, I never want to feel like I'm settled or I don't want to get better. But I think sometimes we're so busy trying to climb the corporate ladder, we forget where we are on the ladder. And sometimes that's your best niche. And I know I'm a good fit in running this organization for the Blackhawks and for Stan Bowman and Al McIsaac. And, never once, like my office is in Chicago. I'm in every meeting. I travel with the team. I've never once been made to feel like, oh, you're just the minor league guy. I think Stan takes a lot of, he appreciates the fact he hasn't had to worry about what's happening in Rockford for the last 13 years. He knows I have it under control. We talk almost on a daily basis. And the fact that he trusts my judgment means the world to me. So it's just a good fit. I love what I do. You deal with great people at the American Hockey League level. I learned from some great people in our league. Dave Anders, starting off, was a phenomenal president for our team, or for our league. I learned from gentlemen like Frank Maselli when he was with the Philadelphia Phantoms, and then San Antonio, Bruce Landon in Springfield, Dougie Yingst in Hershey. Those are people, Glenn Stanford when he was with Hamilton and then Newfoundland. Those are the guys that I learned from. They really helped bring me into the league 15 years ago, because I was with Norfolk for 2 years before I came to Rockford. And I learned from the best on how to do things and treat people. And those gentlemen really taught me, the ways, and they were the veterans at the Board of Governors tables. And it does make me feel a little older now when I'm at that Board of Governors table and I look around and I'm like, oh, I'm the old guy now. But they taught me great lessons. And I think that those are things I try to bring with me to the job every day. I still like jumping on the bus and going on a 5-hour bus ride and watching movies on the bus. And I don't do it every weekend now. Sometimes I'll just drive myself or I'll fly and join the team. But it's a camaraderie when you're in the American League and you're riding those buses together, and you're not staying at the Four Seasons and these glitzy hotels. You're staying at very nice hotels, but it's not like the NHL level. And you really grow. You have a bond with those players that you're doing that with. And guys that I came up with, like Colin Fraser and Corey Crawford and Christopher Stieg and Dustin Bufflin when he was in the minors, and Troy Brower, like taking Troy Brower in Norfolk to help him buy his first car. And, those are things that you're helping these young men become professionals. And to see them achieve what they dream of playing in the NHL. And we want that to be in Chicago. It's not always going to work out that way, but to help them achieve that goal of playing in the National Hockey League, it helps me sleep at night. It makes me proud that I maybe played a small part in that. Like a guy like Carter Hutton, for example, went on to have a great career in the National Hockey League. And when he signed here, he was on American League East Coast League deal and started the year in Toledo. And you love seeing those players go on to have success, and you stay in touch with them, and you build relationships with them. And I think that's the biggest part of the job here that I love. And when they go to Chicago, they don't forget that. It's nice when you see them there and you can kind of rib them a little bit. And it's really worked out to be, the joy of my life is helping develop these young players with our staff here.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
We'll wrap up with a couple quick ones. Patrick Williams, we'll start with you. And I see Brandon, your hand is up. Patrick, your line is active, sir.
Yes, Mark. This past off season was, really stressful for a lot of guys on the NHL, AHL bubble in terms of getting contracts. What do you foresee for the market this summer coming out of all this?
It's really going to be interesting. And, I love watching and reading all your articles on Twitter, and it keeps me up to speed on what's happening, not only, around the league. And sometimes it strikes home with me on different things that other teams that maybe you've seen are doing. So I appreciate that. And, I think you spoke about it a few weeks ago. I think it's going to be a little bit tougher going forward for veterans, because being that it was so young this year, I think a lot of organizations have realized that, you know, going young might be the way to go. We're developing quicker. They're getting that ice time that the younger players are going to get, that ice time that maybe a veteran player would take from them. You know, I think you still need veteran players, for sure. It's just making sure that you get the right ones. And that goes back again to what we had in Cody and Garrett Mitchell. You know, Garrett played, you know, third, fourth line for us all year. Never once, you know, would come to the coach and say, I should be on the power play just because I'm a veteran, or I should be, you know, out there the last minute. He understood, both of them understood what we're doing here. So I think there's going to be a need for veterans still. I just don't know if it's going to be to the point where we've seen in the past, where a lot of teams have that 5 or 6 of them. You know, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for players to get jobs. And it was very tough this year for guys to get jobs. And I'm just glad I'm not on that side of it anymore, because it's tough decisions. I'm getting calls already from GMs, and there's a lot of good hockey players out there. And you know, the one thing we always look for is character. And not only are they good hockey players, they're good people. And I'm hoping they can all find jobs, whether it be in the American League or over in Europe. But I think you are going to see our league trend to start to go a little bit younger now.
And Brandon Kane, we'll wrap up with you. Your line is active.
Hey, Mark, going back to the coaching staff, noticed that Brian Campbell and just this past week, Kendall Coyne was behind the bench. Is there any plan to move them from a developmental role to an assistant coach, or just keep them in a development role?
No, right now they will stay in their current roles, but we always try, you know, when people are available, if they're here, if we can add them to the bench, we like to have them on the bench, because things happen, you know, incredibly fast when you're standing behind that bench trying to coach a team. And, you know, Derek and Anders are managing who's up next on the forwards, the defensemen. They're watching what's happening on the ice. You don't always have maybe 30 seconds to bend down and tell a defenseman something that you know, they need to change out there, or a forward, because that 30, 45 seconds that you're bent down talking to one individual, you're missing what's happening to the 5, 6 individuals that are on the ice. So it's great to have, whether it be Brian or Kendall or Yannick Pro when he's here, like, it's great, or Eric Condra, I know, jumped on a couple times on the road this year. It's great to have them here where they can take the time and bend down and maybe explain something more in depth to a young player before they take that next shift. And we're very lucky that we have the resources that the Wirtz family and the Blackhawks organization allow us to have such a big development department, because, you know, there's not many games where at home where Brian Campbell isn't on our bench, you know. And, you know, Brian has a young family. It'd be very hard after a long career. You know, it's time he also dedicates himself to his own family after playing and being away so much. You know, he does take a lot of time out of his family time, being here 3 to 4 days a week on the ice with our players. He tries to be here for every home game. He'll be at our games when we play the Chicago Wolves. And then, you know, usually if we're on the road and Eric Condra is in Iowa drives down from Minnesota to Iowa to see us play, and he'll jump on the bench with the coaches. And our players enjoy it. And it's not like they're strangers, because they're here quite so often that the players just look at him as a coach. They don't look at him and single him out as a development coach. They're just another coach that's here to help them. So they will stay in their current roles. And again, like Kendall and Eric were new to our group this year and did phenomenal jobs, you know, and their players love working with them. And it's just another step to help them achieve their main goal. And Mark Eaton has a great staff there. And, you know, again, building Rockford doesn't just fall on my shoulders or Stan's shoulders. It falls on the shoulders of our whole organization. You know, Ryan Stewart and his staff pitch in with, you know, the free agents that they recommend and the players that we may sign. And obviously the drafting falls on Mark Kelly and his group. And, you know, what a wonderful job they've done. We had 5 players from the last 2 drafts playing on our team this year, you know, which was probably, you know, a little bit early for them at times, but, you know, 3 players from just this past draft were on our team, and 2 from the 19 draft were on our team. And I think we had 6 players this year that still had junior eligibility left, whether it be as a regular junior or an overage. You know, and those players took such tremendous steps in their careers by being able to work with our staff this year. It's going to be, like I said earlier, a lot of fun to have them back next year and see where they go. You know, I mentioned it the other night to Stan Bowman. Usually we draft a player or they leave college and their first step is they get thrown in with the big fish at the training camp in Chicago, and they're lining up beside Jonathan or Patrick or whoever it might be, and they're like, oh my goodness, like I'm in a Blackhawks training camp, and you know, it's a little overwhelming. It's going to be interesting to see how it translates next year when all these young players go to their first training camp, but they've spent a year now in the American Hockey League gaining that experience. So they should be that much more prepared, and it should make for a very interesting training camp come September.
And I do have one last request. Patrick Williams, you are the final question for Mr. Mark Bernard. Your line is active.
Yes. So along those lines about the junior players, if you look at the NHL CHL rule, someone like Isaac Phillips, for example, got to play in Rockford this year. Where do you stand on that topic, and where do you see that possibly going down the road?
Oh, that's a very good question. You know, I think the one thing we have to look at is how those players handled themselves this year. You know, I know there is, I think once you've drafted them, you know, it's just my opinion. You know, I think once you draft them, you know, if you feel that they're ready to make that step and you think their development's going to be stronger by returning to junior, you return them to junior. If you think it's going to do them more, you know, do better for them by having them play in the American Hockey League, I would love to have that option. But, you know, that's going to be for people at the National Hockey League, the CHL, and obviously our general managers at the NHL level to discuss. But I think there was a lot of young players that played, you know, in the American Hockey League this year around the league that really showed they could handle it. And it'll be interesting because I know those conversations will come up. But, you know, for me, it was a joy to have these kids. They were so excited. And, you know, I know some of them, they were hoping for their players on their team and their organizations, they were hoping the league started in junior, but they also wanted to stay here. So they're really torn because they were enjoying their time here and their development. But, you know, we got our hands on these kids early, and we showed them how to be good pros and how to live on their own and kind of do their own laundry, make their own meals. And it's another step in their maturation process. So, you know, I can't, you know, before we end the call too, I just want to thank everyone for, you know, your continued support. All of you understand what we do here in Rockford and how we, you know, we walk that fine line of development and winning. And, you know, there's some games you drop that you'd love to win, but like I said, young mistakes are usually made by younger players, and they're going to learn from those mistakes. And that's what we're going to continue to do here to focus on developing these young players and turning them into the Blackhawks of tomorrow. So we appreciate all the support that we get from the media and all of our fans here in Rockford in supporting this team. And we're really proud to say that we're going to be here for a long time.